Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name's Molly. I'm a mum here in the UK of 2 children. My husband and I have a 4-year-old biological daughter, and last year we brought home our son through UK adoption. I have previously done a video on my top books for those of you who are going through the UK adoption assessment process for prospective adopters, so I thought today it would be useful to show you the top 5 books that me and my husband have found really useful now that our little man has been home for a good amount of time, and books that we've referenced quite a lot. So I'm just going to jump straight in. The first book that I absolutely love as an adoptive parent is this one, Big Steps for Little People, Parenting Your Adopted Child by Celia Foster. I really love this book. It's a bit of an all-rounder, so it has a lot of information in there about life story work. There's a lot of strategies, for example, if you've heard of the loving step instead of a naughty step, and how you have a step where if a child feels emotional they can go and sit on it and it's kind of like a signal that they want to talk to you. It's signified as like an open space, honest communication. Really love that. There's lots of games in here that encourages attachment and bonding, and there's some really good raw emotional real life experiences in here from the author and from some case studies. So I would definitely recommend this one. It's quite a big read. It's a bit like an extensive version of the Tiddlers and Toddlers book that you may have seen in my prospective adopters book video, but this is definitely one to put on your list. Now, in my previous video, you will most likely have seen the A to Z of therapeutic parenting, and that book is still pretty much the Bible, whether you are a prospective adopter or already have a little one home with you. But I wanted to add another book that is quite similar to that I also find really useful to kind of cross-reference, and it is this one, which is The Unofficial Guide to Adoptive Parenting by Sally Donovan. Now, one of the first books I ever read when we were looking into maybe adopting was Sally Donovan's own story. Yeah, this is it. No Matter What, An Adoptive Family Story of Hope, Love and Healing. I would read that one anyway, just because the story is so heartwarming. But as soon as I read that, I knew I needed to get her next book with all of her top tips. And this is very much similar to the A to Z of therapeutic parenting. It's incredibly easy to read. It's full of really useful tips that have worked for Sally and for her children. It explores a lot of the brain and what Sally calls the red brain, which is when a brain is kind of going into survival mode. It's overstimulated. The hypothalamus is kind of flashing on the alarm system. If any of you have been through training, that will make sense. If not, I'm sorry, that's probably flown straight over your head. But either way, it's really good. There's not a lot of difficult terminology in it at all. My favourite bit of this book, and something that we kind of have put in place, is having an emergency plan. So if you have a child that often gets dysregulated emotionally and you maybe need some backup, so Sally's example is her son, I think it was, runs away a lot, just goes out of the house and runs away, and Sally formulated a plan with her neighbour. Having an emergency plan was one of my favourite bits of this book, and even though my son is 1, it's really good tactics to know, so definitely give this one a read. The next book is one of my favourites. I got this from my university library and I am so pleased I found it. Now, the life story work practical guide to understanding children, to helping children understand their past. I think it's mainly written for a practitioner's guide, but it does say that parents, foster carers, and anybody who is in some way relevant or related to a child who has been adopted can read this book. It is absolutely fantastic. It is full of stories, of examples of things like letterbox letters, later in life letters, different ways to approach life story work, some of the challenges you'll face, how to deal with those challenges. I cannot recommend this book enough. I've had this on loan from my uni's library for about 2 years. I really need to buy it. It is that good, and it's just very comforting for me to read because it tells me what to do. And although as an adopter I've had life story work training, I still feel very uneasy and unprepared for it because it's something I've not done before. So having this really gives me peace of mind. It does even cover life story work for infants. So my little guy is an infant and we plan to start life story work as soon as we possibly can, as soon as he can understand it. And so there's a lot of good information in here for babies right up to teenage and older children and helping them deal with life story work. My 4th favourite book is probably my favourite parenting adopted children book my favourite book for parenting adopted children. It is pretty much collates all the information I've read in other books into one book. And this was on my agency's reading list. I got it from Amazon straight away, and I have read this already about 6 times. It's Why Can't My Child Behave? Empathic Parenting Strategies that Work for Adoptive and Foster Families. It's by Amber Elliott, but it also has contributions from Kim Golding, who, if you are going through the UK adoption process, you've probably done some of Kim Golding's training or seen her a lot on your reading list. They are both fantastic practitioners, and I cannot recommend this book enough. It's basically a very descriptive guide of how to respond to certain behaviours and certain emotions, why these might happen, why it's important to handle them correctly, and what will happen if you don't. And it's quite detailed. There's quite a lot of jargon in it, but I didn't find it difficult to read. I found it so enjoyable to read, and there were a lot of moments where I read this and I thought, oh my gosh, wow, that makes so much sense, or I never knew that. And I had a lot of wow moments reading this book. Everything essential that I needed to know as an adoptive parent is in this book. Took me maybe a week to read, I guess, casually. There's a lot of descriptions in it, a lot of illustrations, in it, to explain things like the attachment seeking mindset. So it's pretty easy to read, flick through, but I reference this so much. And if I was to give a family member or someone who was interested in the way I parent my son a book, this would be it. Last but not least is another really great book. It is Improving Sensory Processing in Traumatised Children. I see this all the time on Instagram within the UK adoption community because so many parents love it. It's by Sarah Lloyd. It's an incredibly quick read, so it is specific to children who have experienced trauma, neglect or loss at any part of their life. I love this book. It takes you very simply through the different parts of the brain and how they respond to trauma, and it is full of games and activities that you can do to help stimulate a little one's different sensory responses. It is fantastic. I have highlighted this to death. It talks about things like the tactile system. It goes into different case studies of how different activities worked for different children, how trauma impacted different children, and it's definitely one just to have on the shelf. If you're into things like theraplay, whilst this isn't specifically theraplay activities, they're very similar, and we kind of combine these with theraplay. Now, our little man loves a lot of these activities, and a lot of them can be catered for infants or for older children. I found it very easy to find an activity for a baby, and if it was a bit complex, I just simple it down, and it was super easy to do. So I would highly recommend this one. Even read this before your little one moves home, just so that you've kind of got an idea of some of the toolkits you might need, like cotton wool or balloons, for example, that you might need in the house just to grab quickly if you want to do a few of these. But definitely add this to your toolkit. I hope that's been helpful. I wanted to keep it just to 5 books because these honestly are the stash that I just refer to a lot. They're the ones that I reread, that I highlight, that I kind of post-it note in, as well as the A to Z of therapeutic parenting, but I didn't want to re-go through that one again, but that is definitely on the list as well. If you have any recommendations of books that you found useful as an adoptive parent, please put them down below. I always have a parenting book on the go, and I'm always looking out for recommendations for new ones to read. I love to learn, and a lot of people I know in the adoption process love to learn as well, so I hope that has been helpful. If you are interested in the books that I found useful for prospective adopters, I will link that below as well, because there's no reason why you can't read them as an adoptive parent, and there's no reason you can't read these before you have your little ones placed with you as well. So I'll make sure that I link all the books down below. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more adoption related content. I'm going to try and upload weekly whilst it's COVID and lockdown and I'm on adoption leave and I have the time while my little man naps, so subscribe and keep an eye out for those. If you do have any more questions or comments, you can either comment below or you can find me on Instagram at MollyMamaAdopt. I'm happy to help in any way and happy to answer any questions or share any more parts of our story. Thank you for watching, guys. Bye!